Burnout is typically framed as a resilience problem, but this is operationally inaccurate. Burnout is not just an employee issue, it's also an organizational system failure. If performance, retention, and culture are suffering, burnout is already impacting profit and loss. And leaders who see burnout as a systems issue are managing the financial impact, not just managing burnout because it feels personal. This is why it's a risk management conversation, not just a wellness perk discussion. Wellness perks help, but don't solve the bigger problem. They mask the symptoms until burnout is no longer visible on the dashboard, meaning burnout hides behind productivity and compliance for a time. This looks like good output that stays high while cognitive, emotional, and relational capacity slowly erodes it internally. So, being aware of the signs of early burnout is imperative to preventing major impact to profit and loss. Early burnout looks like disengagement, errors, irritability, turnover, intent, and employees who no longer care. You see, I've seen this as a supervisor where professionals had dedicated time to complete documentation. Instead of staying at work to get caught up, they left early. When asked why, I'd hear, I just needed a break this week. I will use the time next week. Yet, week after week, they would fall further behind in documentation. And by this time, when the metrics shift in a noticeable way, the damage is already done. The cost to the organization was already underestimated and possibly irreplaceable. Because not only does this cost the leader time to oversee the employee who is behind, problem solve with them ways to fix it, but the potential for write-ups or termination that leads to increased turnover and recruitment expenses. So for every employee you have to replace, you are spending at least 1.5 times the amount of their salary on recruitment and training just to get a new person up to speed. Or maybe you have a presenteeism issue because people are not at work fully. And if they're at work, they're not fully functioning. You might physically see them, but their output has declined. You see, as a licensed mental health professional, I have seen requests to complete documentation for medical or disability leave 10 times more in the last 6 years than I have in 16 years of practice. And as an organization, you're probably seeing more medical claims, which means insurance premiums will rise next year. Disability leave with uncertainty of how long you have to keep the position available, and absenteeism due to employees calling out sick frequently. The result then shows up because your leadership bandwidth is lost due to constant people issues. The more leaders have to deal with people issues, absenteeism, and turnover, the less time they are productive with their own assigned duties. Last, it eventually shows up as culture decay that drives high performers out the door first. If your people are now cynical about being at work, burnout has infected the entire organization when it could have been prevented. You see, burnout becomes persistent in high performing cultures when overfunctioning is rewarded, not regulated. When a high performer is praised for staying late every time they are asked instead of protecting that recovery time. In exhausted cultures, everything becomes urgent, which turns into the new culture identity. Leading systems to rely on heroics instead of sustainability, when stability should be the norm. This shows up when leaders are saying things like, this is just how it is, get used to it, find a way to deal with it. Instead of redesigning workflows and systems, leaders are normalizing stress. Employees no longer feel safe and supported at work. This constant pressure leads to erosion of psychological safety. No one should be expected to work under constant pressure. This culture shift in urgency triggers specific risk categories in the enterprise. Specifically, burnout impacts operational reliability, where what used to work is no longer effective. And talent retention declines because the organization's reputation is terrible. The leadership pipeline is overloaded as leaders who excel in leading teams and creating solutions are now just firefighters. You see, organizational resilience can't be found because you're putting out one fire after another, nonstop urgency in every workflow. Burnout increases error rates and decision fatigue. Risk mitigation requires systems change and not perks. Where wellness without structural reform is just theater. So those wellness perks come across as a smoke show, and that leaders don't truly care. So you're probably asking yourself, how do organizations reduce burnout effectively? And let's start to explore this. So first, we have to treat workloads as a design issue, not an endurance test, building systems that help employees succeed. Be sure you measure capacity and not just output. So let's take two employees who have the same output. One takes 50 hours to compose or complete the same task, while the other employee does it in 30 hours. Yet the one who pushes 50 hours is exhausted, starting to experience brain fog and struggling to make decisions. As a leader, it is easy to ask both of these individuals to take on more because they show good output. Yet what we need to explore with them is their capacity. So is there something the one getting it done in 30 hours is doing that increases their capacity while they maintain their same output? We need to train leaders in nervous system literacy and stress recovery because leaders should be modeling healthy and effective ways to regulate their nervous system and stress response. Because employees are more likely to follow the steps of someone who implements what they're also speaking. Because recovery needs to be built into workflows, not after hours only. The human brain is not designed to constantly task switch 8 hours a day without recovery time built in. So workflows that have that recovery time will lead to higher output and quality work because employees will become more efficient. And lastly, we must normalize this sustainability as a performance standard. Having a team that sticks around for 20 years becomes an operational machine with everyone doing their part. So in the next video in this series, we will start to explore how leaders' behavior quietly burns teams out. So be sure to hit the subscribe and follow button so you don't miss it. This series breaks down how burnout impacts performance, culture, and results, where we will explore more about burnout quietly destroying your organization and how to create a real solution. If you're wondering how burnout is rampant in your organization, you can check out the organizational burnout quiz. It is marked below, but you can go to burnoutbasics.com/org quiz. This can give you a good insight to what's really going on in your organization. Because remember, burnout is not just a personal weakness, it's an organizational liability. And everyone in the organization needs to take responsibility to change it. Because when it is ignored, it erodes performance instead of preserving it. So subscribe and stay ahead of the curve because culture isn't what you say, it's what your system allows and how you lead by example.